Police stations on fire, shop owners beaten in their own stores, the destruction of entire city blocks. To our media, to major corporations, to the Democratic Party itself, this is all defensible. It's heroic. It's the modern manifestation of the civil rights movement. Bob Woodson was actually a part of the civil rights movement, the original one. He's the founder of the Woodson Institute. He joins us now to assess what we're seeing on television. Mr. Woodson, thanks so much for coming on tonight. I'm just going to throw it to you. You've been watching.
Pleased to be here, Tucker.
Thank you. What do you make of this?
Well, Tucker, what you were saying about it really being a class, as a veteran of the civil rights movement, one of the great promises we gave to low-income blacks is that if you were to elect blacks to public office through Voting Rights Act, and we were running those institutions, that all of Black America would be better off. In the past 50 years, $22 trillion have been spent on poverty programs. 70% goes not to the poor, but those who serve poor people. So many of those people taking office use this money to create a class of people who are running these cities. And now, after 50 years of liberal Democrats running the inner cities, where we have all of these inequities that we have, race is being used as a ruse, as a means of deflecting attention away from critical questions such as why are poor blacks failing in systems run by their own people? If race was an issue, even the criminal justice system. And if we continue to look at life through a racial prism, when evil wears a black face, it will escape detection and therefore correction.
But how damaging is it to our society for leaders to effectively incite racial division and hatred in order to cover their own failures? That seems like a very reckless thing to do.
It is worse. I mean, when you have low-income people in these people like in the Phillips section of Minneapolis, and these are ethnic neighborhoods, business centers that have been wiped out. People cannot get to the stores now, and they're crying out, and they're saying when everyone goes home and the cameras are gone and the civil rights grace-wreathing celebrities, you know, have done what they have done, low-income people are the ones who are suffering and already, and they will continue to suffer. And that's why we must confront this and not allow race. We must deracialize race, and we must desegregate poverty. And that's what the Woodson Center is committed to do, working with the least of God's children to give them an opportunity to create solutions from the bottom up. But it is not race. I don't know what systemic racism is. Maybe someone can explain what that means.
It's a way to make people be quiet and stop asking questions about economics, as far as I can tell. So, but I just have to ask you, since you've been involved for 50 years, as you just said, and you were involved in the original civil rights movement, how does it feel to look back at the original goals of the movement and then to see people like Shaun King use the phrase civil rights activist in reference to himself? Is that bewildering to you?
It is bewildering and also painful, because I left the movement because I realized that many of the people who suffered most, poor blacks, did not benefit from the change. That their demographics was used by some of those leaders. It's more class than it is race.
Yeah.
And so they used it, and now race is being used to deflect attentions away from the failures of people running those institutions. The question is, why are black kids failing in school systems run by their own people? When Eric Holder was the U.S. attorney in Washington, D.C., a lot of young people were shot by the police, but they were black police shooting black kids, and not one was prosecuted. But there was no public outcry, because as long as illegality or evil wears a black face, then it escapes detection. And that's what's wrong with looking through life through the prism of race.
Right. It doesn't make anybody better, that's for sure. Why do you think corporate America, so many of our biggest and most profitable companies, have jumped in so aggressively on the side of Black Lives Matter, for example?
You know, I really think it's white guilt, it's really a white guilt, and also it's an easy out. there are two people that I think are destroying this country, and that are guilty white people and angry, rich, entitled blacks who continue to play the race card, and they don't have to live with the consequences of their advocacy. When they're talking about the worst thing that can happen with police, right now, it's very ironic that as police nullification occur and they don't patrol in those communities, the murder rate goes up.
Of course.
And so actually, when these middle-class people who live in safe communities are villainize the police, but low-income people the murder rate goes up. That same study you quoted from Harvard also documented the fact through police nullification results in less police, more black-on-black crime, more black-on-black deaths. Poor people are being hustled by these middle-class politicians. As Malcolm X said, they're being bamboozled, scammed, hoodwinked, and one day, that sleeping giant is going to wake up and understand who the real culprit is.
Yeah.
And it is people who look like them who are failing to use their positions to profit the least of God's children. Instead, they're using it to benefit themselves and their own group.
You're telling a very sad story, Bob Woodson. Mr. Woodson, thank you so much for coming on tonight. Appreciate it. Good to see you.
Thank you.